All right, colleagues, it's 9:30. I'm going to ask that we beg your indulgence momentarily. There's a slight change to Parliament's legal representatives coming. Fatima, whom you've been dealing with, is dealing with another bill. Advocate Jenkins will be here shortly. So it's just a matter of a few minutes. We need to wait for him to arrive, but he's on his way. So just waiting for Advocate Jenkins. Yeah, so it's a few minutes out. No, yeah. All right, colleagues, good morning. Advocate, want a moment to catch your breath? You good? Okay. All right, cool. All right. Sorry about that delay. Um, we have almost 100% compliance on starting time. So, Advocate, you good to go? Okay. All right, colleagues, good morning and welcome. I would like to welcome you to our meeting this morning and welcome retired Brigadier Jap Burger and his legal representative, whom I'll ask to introduce himself shortly. I'm just going to make a statement and then hand over to Advocate Jenkins to take us through matters related to the subpoena. This morning's meeting is on the appearance of retired Brigadier Jap Burger on allegations of corruption and fraudulent activities as well as other maladministration at Eskom. The former Eskom Group Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Andre de Ruyter, appeared before the Standing Committee on Public Accounts on 26 April 2023 following public allegations that he made pertaining to corruption, criminal activity, financial maladministration and procurement irregularities at Eskom. During his appearance before the committee, Mr. de Ruyter cited law enforcement and intelligence agencies that he personally engaged with to report the aforementioned allegations, including the sharing of a privately funded information gathering exercise on Eskom. The committee subsequently resolved to extend invitations to all parties mentioned by the former Eskom GCE to ascertain the extent of their knowledge regarding the serious allegations and to disclose the actions they have taken to address these allegations. On 9 May 2023, the committee met with the cited law enforcement and anti-corruption agencies. During this meeting, insights were shared by the South African Police Services National Commissioner, who disclosed that Brigadier Jap Burger was the SAPS representative who engaged in discussions with the former Eskom GCE concerning corruption, criminal activity, financial maladministration and procurement irregularities at the National Power Utility. This was further confirmed by the head of security at Eskom on 10 May 2023. The meeting in question with Brigadier was said to have been on or around August 2022, which the Brigadier allegedly sought specific information on the designated areas of criminality, maladministration, fraud and corruption within Eskom. On 7 June 2023, the committee held a follow-up meeting with the National Commissioner and the Special Investigating Unit, who are present here today, with a keen interest in hearing from Brigadier Berger due to the continuous and crucial references to him and his knowledge of the information gathering exercise at the National Power Utility. Unfortunately, Brigadier Berger did not attend the meeting on 7 June 2023. During this meeting, the National Commissioner mentioned that he had directed the Brigadier to attend, despite the Brigadier expressing safety concerns related to making a public appearance, at meeting which the committee directed that the necessary security protocols must be put in place for the Brigadier in light of the allegations or the mentions that had been made by the National Commissioner. The Commissioner further stated that he had called Brigadier Berger in the morning of the meeting to inquire of his whereabouts, emphasizing that he should be present as required by the committee. The National Commissioner revealed that Brigadier Berger had expressed discomfort about appearing before the committee, but the Commissioner insisted that he attend and provide reasons if he chose not to. In the same meeting, the Commissioner highlighted ongoing SAPS processes related to the allegations of corruption, criminal activity and maladministration at Eskom. The Commissioner reported that he had engaged with Brigadier Berger, who provided feedback on his meeting with the former GCE, but Brigadier claimed that Mr. de Ruyter provided him with information pertaining to the allegations but did not give him the information gathering report. Brigadier Berger allegedly informed the commissioner that he took the information to one of the investigating bodies he was part of. The committee further resolved to invite Brigadier Berger to a meeting on the 12th of September 2023. In response to the committee's invite, the National Commissioner disclosed that Brigadier Berger had since retired at the end of June 2023 and will therefore not be appearing before SCOPA as he is fully engaged in the month of September 2023. Before exercising its powers to summon him in accordance with Section 56A of the Constitution of the Republic, read with the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act of 2004, the committee extended a final invite to the Brigadier to appear on 25 October. Consequently, Brigadier Berger advised the committee that he is not in a position to accept the invitation. Following interactions between Parliamentary Legal Services and the Brigadier's legal representatives, Brigadier Berger has agreed to appear before the committee in compliance with the subpoena served to him by SCOPA as he is here this morning. Therefore, the purpose of today's meeting is to engage Brigadier Berger with the aim to understand the extent of his knowledge regarding the allegations made by the former GCE, Mr. Andre de Ruyter, and to take the committee through and disclose the actions that he has taken in this response. With that background, I would like now to hand over to Advocate Jenkins to go through the processes of the subpoena. Advocate, over to you.
Good morning, Chairperson, colleagues. Good morning, Chairperson. Let me start again. Honourable members, colleagues, as well as the witness and all other guests with him. Chair, I was asked to administer the oath or solemn affirmation on the witness this morning. So I think for the record, may I ask the witness just to state its name, please? His name.
I am Johan Albertus Petrus Burger, otherwise referred to as JAP or Jap, as my nickname.
Thank you very much. Mr. Berger, in terms of the NA rules, committee may summons a person also in terms of the powers and privileges, and when a person is summoned, the option, it's not really an option, but the rules require that the witness is put under oath. So prior to the witness giving evidence before this House and through the chairperson, I need to first inform you of the oath. So please be informed that by law you are required to answer fully and satisfactory all questions lawfully put to you, or to produce any document that you may be required to produce in connection with the subject matter of the inquiry. So notwithstanding the fact that the answers or documents could incriminate you or expose you to criminal or civil proceedings or damages, however, you are protected in that the evidence given under oath before this House may not be used against you in any court or place outside Parliament, except in criminal proceedings concerning a charge of perjury or a charge relating to the evidence or documents required in these proceedings. Now, with regard to the latter, I want to refer you to Section 17.2 of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act, which makes it a criminal offence if a person willfully furnishes a House or committee with information or makes a statement before it which is false or misleading, and a person is then on a guilty verdict liable to a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 2 years. So may I ask Mr. Berger if you would like to take an oath or a solemn affirmation?
I will take the oath.
Now, may I ask you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I swear that the evidence I shall give
I swear that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and
nothing but the truth, so help me God.
and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you. I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say, colleagues, Brigadier Berger will have the latitude to consult with his legal representative as and when he deems it necessary, and that opportunity will be provided to him as and when he asks questions. The second issue I want to raise is that we as a committee as well did consult with Parliament Legal Services in light of the letters that the Brigadier had written to the Speaker, and our scope is quite clearly defined insofar as where we as a committee may focus, and hence the emphasis which I would have made in the opening statement about the allegations being related to financial maladministration, corruption at Eskom. And finally, to say that Brigadier Burger does not appear before us, notwithstanding the summons, as a suspect. So I think that matter must be clarified so that we can have a meaningful and clear engagement. I'll now hand over to Brigadier Berger if there's any opening remarks or statements that he would like to make, and request that he introduce his legal representative. And then we'll come to colleagues for questions. Over to you, sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. My legal representative here is Mr. Milton de la Harp, who is assisting me today. May I proceed? Mr. Chairperson, thank you very much. And from my side, if I can extend an apology, what might have been seen as avoidance, I can clarify that. I'm a retired brigadier from the South African Police Service, working on corruption basically since 1999. So I've got, I think I've most probably got part of the longest serving in the police dealing with the matters of corruption. Out of that, I've established the anti-corruption task team when I was at the Hawks, until that was closed down and shut down. Wait, before that. I started in 1999. Guess what happened in the early 2000s? They closed down the anti-corruption unit. Okay. So when the next opportunity arose for the establishment of the Hawks in 2009 and 2010, we established the anti-corruption task team. Again, that was closed down by the new incumbent Lieutenant General, now I think it's now Major General Meza. So part of the message I want to communicate is we've got difficulties within the structures doing the operational work, continuously being clamped down and being not supported. Okay, I can elaborate on that as well. So I was removed from the anti-corruption task team in 2015. I was requested in 2018 again on some of the corruption investigations with IPID, etc., to support the investigations. That led to 2019. I was asked to assist with the establishment of the Investigating Directorate Corruption within the NPA, and subsequently I was seconded for 3 years over to the NPA, which I withdrew because it is the feasibility of doing work in this space dwindled. I was then moved back with the understanding that I would still support the anti-corruption work from the Office of the National Commissioner or from a Deputy National Commissioner. So since 2021, October basically, I've been adrift. Now, I contemplated putting in my early retirement, literally because of no traction, no interest, basically from the police management in dealing with matters of serious corruption, specifically as it relates to serious corruption, state capture, etc. And I'll come back to that now. That was in 2021. Then I was requested, and this is the strange thing. I was initially not tasked by the National Commissioner. The National Commissioner approached retired General, Major General Jan Boysen to set up a team and lead a team to deal with the Eskom investigations. Now, my understanding at the time was that to set up a team that they wanted to deal with comprehensively. In other words, from top down. And the difference between top down and bottom up. You can have a lot of complaints laid runners, where you go after the runners. You catch the guy with a sack of coal over his shoulder that was stolen. And in essence, we've been keeping ourselves busy with that level, which is the general detective level, according to me. We don't move up to the orchestrators and the kingpins, if you want to call it, behind that. But the way that the organization is, I can almost say, forced to function, is push everything down to the, I call it the docket level, the transactional level, the incident level, and not really the organized crime space. To me, that is of extreme importance. People can come here, quote thousands of cases they're investigating. Are they addressing the problem? I can tell you, no, they are not. And I've got, past 24 years, basically, experience in that they are not. They are avoiding away from it and trying to move it down to a transactional nature and individualized docket. We're not going to win the fight against corruption, dealing with it in that way. So by saying that, I've actually addressed the anomaly on how we approach. We are not approaching these issues as a matter from national interest, national security interest. Just look at what Eskom and the lack of power or lack of provisioning of power is doing to the country. It affects all walks of life. National security, but we want to address it from a incident, a docket perspective. Okay, so what I lobbied in my letter also to you is the whole issue of national security. We do have a National Security Council, don't we? What have they done around this? Because what does the National Security Council do? I don't know either, because they've been silent on this. They've not addressed anything. Okay. I'm just going to go quickly through letters. So that is background. It wasn't a position of arrogance, but a position of I'm working from a contaminated space. Even if you look at the address by the National Commissioner, he misrepresented me. That's why I wrote the letter to the Speaker. And he avoided any. He actually highlighted. No, he's afraid. If I remember correctly, I didn't even watch it. That was a misrepresentation of what I said, and those 4 points that I raised was the key issues of concern. On the issues of witnesses and so on, remember, I've got an obligation as a police officer. Witnesses, whistleblowers, to protect their identity proactively, not reactively, not wait until there's a problem. But the way I conduct my business, I need to make sure to the fullest extent that people are protected. Okay, so I just want to emphasize that. Just back to my statement, I wish to address the committee on several critical points, which I've partly touched on, pertaining to nature and scope of the investigations. So the word investigation here is not a docket. It's a more comprehensive strategic assessment of what is going on around Eskom, as well as the limitations within which we operate. I've already started to address part of that. I've written a letter to the Speaker, and I've noted, I stated Eskom is a national security concern. So, and I've been, as I said, I've been working over 24 years in the corruption space. It is not to obscure what is going on, but it's rather the obligation to deal with it in a sensitive matter as national security. I noted oversight by the parliamentary committees, which are, especially in terms of the public space, there is information, but it's not information that you should be opening up to the public. There are ongoing investigations, there are ongoing security concerns, and that's also why the other portfolio committees, like the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, and I'm going to come back to that part specifically, that should be engaged in terms of oversight. Because, Mr. Chair, to put it bluntly, the processes of government is not working. So is the oversight mechanisms is not working. I'll get back to that now. Investigations into criminality such as organized crime, corruption, as it relates to national security, are classified and as part, under law, not open to the public. And the last part I've already partly dealt with is that the issues of protecting persons, witnesses, investigators, etc. Let me come back to before I go on. Let me come back to the matter of Eskom. Eskom is a part of the critical infrastructure of the country. If I'm correct, I think we all understand it as such. So as part of the critical infrastructure, it's a national key point, etc. Who is supposed to be serving Eskom or the energy sector with intelligence, protective intelligence, ensuring that they are security compliant and competent? That is the State Security Agency. In my initial engagements with Mr. de Ruyter, I emphasized the fact, and I asked him, have you received a security briefing on that? And the answer was no. I asked him, are all your people vetted? And they had to go and check. So we initiated a process. Now, again, if you deal with organized crime, you have to make sure that you start doing, you have a comprehensive approach. So Mr. de Ruyter then engaged State Security on the vetting part, and they did come in, and they started with vetting processes. Because what happens in that process, you start to identify certain vulnerabilities, organizationally, but also individually. But there was no product or support that I could determine from State Security, which is your protective intelligence, etc., that is supposed to go to a CEO or any head of an agency that is of such vital importance, such as Eskom. The similar is most probably on Transnet and all the other entities that were captured. So, reference to a matter of national security is not merely for the secretness of it. It's also have all departments or all functions of government done their work to protect the entity. What I found, Mr. Chair, is no. It's no. It is even to the extent where I opened up information and I shared information with the State Security Agency. All cooperation was shut down from their perspective. Now, how can we function? I've just had a discussion when I walked with my colleagues here from the SIU. Is we need a collaborative approach, an integrated approach, a whole of government approach when we look at these issues, and not individualized, as I said, down to a docket level, etc. And it is as if this is being done on purpose, not to have a full response by government using all its organs to protect itself. Okay. Mr. Chair, then your letter, as I stated here, is crucial to underscore the jurisdictional scope, and thank you for the letter that you sent last week, where you confirmed the scope of your questions will be focused on your mandate, and I support that. Also, what I want to say is we need to activate some of the other oversight mechanisms as well. Yeah, most of the stuff I've already touched on. It's imperative to recognize that investigations into organized crime and corruption, especially those of this nature, are classified for a reason. Confidentiality surrounding such inquiries is essential for the effectiveness and success. Don't underestimate the amount of support and contamination that there is in the government sector from the organized crime syndicates. You'll be amazed. Okay, so it is not merely a position, if I can call it a position of arrogance. It's a position of we know what is going on and how contaminated we are. So we need to make sure that what we do is that we take into account all the risks, etc. Moreover, addressing matters of this kind under the current proposition could set a precedent and far-reaching consequences. I want to reiterate my willingness to meet the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence and other oversight mechanisms at the earliest convenience. This meeting, conducted on an urgent and expedited basis, would provide an opportunity or appropriate platform for responding to inquiries that align with statutory and regulatory frameworks governing this. Such engagements would ensure a judicious and lawful approach in addressing concerns while upholding the paramount importance of national security. I thank you for your attention, and I just want to emphasize, Mr. Chair, it is not, I've dedicated more than half of my career on corruption work. I'm not now going to pull back and hide behind stuff, but there's issues of what we have to do and deal with in the right way. Okay, Mr. Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive background. I think it places a lot of things in context. Honourable van Minnen. So I'm not going to interrupt her flow of questions, just to save time. So as she poses a question, just respond. I'll come in as and when it's necessary, or if you need to confer with your representative. It just makes it easier.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, just to check in terms of process, do you want me to run through all the questions or okay, thanks very much. Thank you very much, Brigadier, for appearing before us. I think we really do appreciate that. We certainly this year have spoken to and about Eskom and the Eskom board and various role players, including security sectors involved with this. And I think the whole Eskom story has become quite complex and quite complicated, with, on one hand, allegations get made, then they get denied, then other people come in adding bits and pieces, so it starts to become apparent that there were meetings, it starts to become apparent that there were people implicated, including political figures. The extent of the corruption, we've certainly seen indications that there is an enormous amount of corruption at a very high level. What has concerned me enormously is the board as it was earlier in this year, the board chair having now resigned or retired, did not seem, with some exceptions, to be particularly interested in pursuing many of the allegations that were made. In fact, I remember distinctly the chair saying, well, the allegations against Eskom weren't his problem, they were a SAPS problem. Now, I personally think that that is irresponsibility of the most appalling nature, because if you are the chairman of the board, you really should have an interest in the entity involved. So what I'm interested in here is you're talking about the fact that we hear about the small arrests. So we hear and we see the lists of arrests for this, that, and the other, people who've been operating the freight or the trucks or the drivers, things that are really not particularly complicated, and it is very much the lower tier issues. Now, what you've been saying about SAPS, I'd be very interested, if you can, to elaborate on what you talk about in terms of investigating corruption, that they push it down to the transactional level, down to the docket level. Because from what you're saying, I understand that the implication is that the big issues of corruption and the real networks are not really being addressed, and that it is, for various reasons, it seems to be that the smaller operators are the ones that are really being dealt with in possibly an attempt, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, in an attempt to obscure what's really going on. In that sense, would you be prepared to talk about whether or not that's deliberate or whether or not it is a flaw in the system? So I would particularly be interested in that. Certainly we have dealt with a number of law enforcement agencies, some of whom do seem very committed to dealing with issues, the SIU being one, but at the same time we've had interviews with SAPS and law enforcement that have been very unsatisfactory. So I'd really be interested in getting your perspective on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me make the statement. We've all heard and spoken about state capture. There was a time, I think 2011, I had a meeting with Willie Hofmeyer, and there was a discussion. My offices was at the SIU, just next to the main interest. And it was almost frowned on to use the word state capture. You know, it was not allowed. Now it's become a daily reference. Why? Because of the Zondo Commission, huge emphasis on state capture and the fact that we've been captured. Now, typically, everyone sort of assumes that state capture is a legacy state that we are in. Maybe it's not. It is not. Okay. So many of the organs have not yet been, if you want to use the coin, uncaptured. The integrity has not been restored. Okay. Now, part of that, and Mr. Chair, coming back to my emphasis on, for instance, security clearances, vetting, and so forth, that is but one instrument to start cleaning out and making sure that you've got people of integrity. The vetting will only partially assist you with that, but which will lead to the becoming institutions of integrity. We don't have that. We've not cleaned out. Just look at what's going on at the NPA, the prosecutors and so on that were involved in various, let me just call it criminality, because that is exactly what it is. They're not cleaned out. So we'll axe one or two heads, but the rest we don't clean out the system. I worked in 2018 on a process which we call the Integrity Support Project. It was also presented to the Portfolio Committee on Police, which is start using data to fast-track the, if you want to call it, the integrity testing of individuals as an instrument. So that was presented, and guess what happened then? It was killed off. No further resources was taken, it was never further developed, etc. So was that a deliberate attempt or just a failure in the system? That an initiative just wasn't taken forward. So, ma'am, we are working against resistance. Okay. But it's actually both. There's deliberate attempts, resistance, but there's also a failure in the design of government in its approach. If I were to ask you, what is the SOP for organized crime detected? What should we do? Shouldn't there be a national security response which involves all stakeholders or role players? Not just sitting around a table, the police pointing the finger at the SIU pointing a finger at the NPA, and the NPA pointing a finger again at the police, etc. Where's the collective? Because firstly, the fact that national institutions, national interests, such as Transnet, such as Eskom, and you can go through the whole Zondo report as but a version of what is in the country. What are the responses supposed to be? How did that happen? If there was civilian intelligence, and if they put it on the table, if there was criminal intelligence from crime intelligence, what happened to those? Now, I don't know, but I have not seen any of those processes active and functioning. The National Security Intelligence Act speaks about a national intelligence estimate. What does it say about the energy sector? And I'm specifically going to energy sector, because that is the next level where atrocities are being committed, even moving past Eskom. So most of the investigations, and Mr. Chair, I want to caution against that, is the emphasis only going on what happened in the past. We've got a current and going concern. The energy sector as it is should be protected. So we don't sit 10 years down the line and then we look at criminal cases to deal with the issues that happened. And that is the difference, having a holistic perspective on dealing with your risk and your threats. I'm not playing down that people shouldn't be held accountable, even for the smaller part, your transactional nature of crime. But we've got detective services, so we're dealing with that. But who's working on the organized crime? Now, coming back to a statement I made to Andre de Ruyter, I said Eskom is functioning in I didn't call it a swamp, I had another clever word for it, but it comes down to a swamp of organized crime. Especially if you look at the Mpumalanga area, and this is information and intelligence I got around it, not from Eskom per se, not from de Ruyter. It is known. As I previously alluded to, Eskom was already under investigation as part of the security concern by other entities before. Supposed to be fast-track investigations. Well, 10 years, it's not fast-tracked. Okay. So, to answer you, it's both. There was a flaw. Let me maybe mention this because I had a discussion with our minister in January. There's supposed to be what they call a national crime combating strategy.
One, please, Minister, just
Minister Kele, thank you, Kele. I went to see him as well with retired Major General Boyson to clarify, because nothing has happened for over, 8 months, 7 months. So I asked him, what is the stance on the National Crime Combating Strategy? Now, loosely, the National Crime Combating Strategy was conceived in 1999, and it was loosely based on 2 primary focus areas. It is what they call the geographical approach, in other words, the incident, where did it happen, and which station, etc. And the other one was organized crime approach, which is more thematic, narcotics or whatever, and that's a top-down. That really affects national security, whilst your local housebreaking does not necessarily affect national security until you can roll it up in terms of the theme. Now, narcotics obviously fits into both. We've developed the geographical approach. That's why you've got the NAT joints. We deploy people all over the place. Deployment of people will not address organized crime or organized nature of it. Yes, it might situationally inhibit. That's not going to address the real organized crime. Very little work was done on the organized crime approach, if I can coin it. In actual fact, the specialized units were closed early 2000s, and there's been no real emphasis on re-establishing it. We're still dealing with it as a docket. A case is referred to them. So, ma'am, it is. Maybe I should say, because there are really still some good police officers, good officials. I would say primarily that it's a systemic design flaw. We don't deal with issues from a national perspective from organized crime approach. I don't think that has been. I know it has not been properly developed, but that also supplemented by deliberate action where individuals would take action that it's either not supported or it's subtly scuttled. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, we've sat with the Minister of Police, and his exact words were that he had enormous political motivation to try to deal with the issues of, let's use the term, the swamp of organized crime around Eskom. But at the same time, although he assured us of his enormous political will, there seems to have been, certainly from what we've seen, very little action, constant contradictions from various parties, including various different law enforcement agencies, as to what was known and what wasn't known, particularly around whether or not they had met with de Ruyter. A number of parties tried to deny that the meeting had happened. At the same time, other people admitted that it had, or the various meetings that had happened, but they were aware of the reports, that they were aware of at least one high-profile name involved with issues in Mpumalanga. Now that you have retired, is that work continuing from an investigative point of view? Has it been handed over? I mean, I don't know if you know what's going on there. And why would there be this deliberate sort of muddying of the waters in terms of who knew what when, that quite frankly is making a lot of the law enforcement agencies look either complicit or incompetent?
Ma'am, the latter part of your statement might also be true, and maybe more true that you would believe. I think you've seen in the newspapers around the provincial commissioner in Mpumalanga. I'm not up to date with the dealings, but there's direct police involvement. But let me take it 2 levels up. Have you asked the Minister of Police, Mr. Pele, what is his policy on dealing with matters of organized crime? Because that is where policy direction should be coming from if there's a failure on the operational level to deal with it. There could be guidelines developed, there could be a directive issued without him getting involved in the direct content of investigations. An example is the cash and transit robberies. Again this year, it's creating havoc in the country. Are we dealing with it from a national interest or dealing with it from a national concern? We're having meetings, all the security companies around it, we're having meetings and meetings. What is the problem? Why can't we address it? Mr. Chairperson, I've got a very strong belief. We can address it, but we have to put our heads together, stop functioning as individuals or individual parties, and we can resolve this. This is a collective responsibility, and you'll be amazed to see how some of these syndicates, where they find their support from. And it's not only the role of the police service. It involves the whole of intelligence services. Simple thing, firearms. Why can they, for instance, and I'm using the CRT robberies as something that is present, it's in our communities, it's on the streets. We see the incident, but we don't see the holistic, how it's affecting our economy, how it's affecting, because this is one of the most probably, apart from Eskom, your drivers in trust, or the breakdown of trust in the country. It's severe, just the violence in the country. So from my perspective, there should be a renewed look in what is our response as government to dealing with these issues. Because, ma'am, the simple answer to this is, once we've got that on CRTs right, you'll have the recipe for what should be happening at Eskom, what should be happening relevant to Transnet, and all the other areas of concern. Mr. Chair, when you started, you said you would like to know what have I done. Now, one of the issues I did, I've taken up the issue, two issues, with Dr. Sidney Mufamadi, who was the advisor, security advisor to the presidency. And I raised the issue that the departments are not functioning as a collective. And I suggested to him that we should look at invoking the National Security Council in order to just start guiding initiatives and making sure. What is difficult in terms of an integrated approach is a one DG that has to task another DG. You understand? So the role of such a body, of facilitating what each department should be doing and when, I think is appropriate. His response to me was, he doesn't really think that will help, or that we can trust him to do this. So from my perspective, I don't know where else to go. Similar, if you look at the design, that's the other issue that I discussed with him, is the design of a anti-corruption body, mechanism, competency, which was a huge draft. I saw that draft bill was pushed back, I think, on the NPA, investigating director becoming the body. We need to look at the whole architecture, from prevention, involving the SIU, involving various role players, and not merely at a investigating directorate. An investigating directorate is specifically what it said. It comes in and investigates after the fact, after it's happened. So we must get upstream involved and manage the risks and the threats involved of corruption. Sorry, I'm using this also to articulate this, because that is what we have to have a more comprehensive that can look at whatever is happening now. How can we start to prevent it whilst we address the reactive part of it? Ma'am.
Now, you've talked about oversight, and I mean, you know, in Parliament we regard obviously oversight as coming from the committees, one of the things obviously which SCOPA has been doing in this case. But also from what you've been saying, obviously you're referring to oversight in terms of bodies like that, about collective approaches, anti-corruption units. But it also touches on the issue of the joints, the national intelligence. There is a concern, and it's certainly something that we have bumped up against in the last couple of years in SCOPA. A concern of mine is very much that as soon as something goes to the joints, it's classified, nobody sees it, nobody knows what happens. And I'm deeply concerned that as part of this, let's call it inefficient oversight, the flaws that we're seeing in the system, the inability to actually track down and deal with the sort of powers behind the organized crime issue, I'm concerned that pushing everything through the joints, making sure that everything is classified like that, although obviously we aren't going to discuss evidence in an open meeting in Parliament, I'm concerned that the process and the structure helps to actually conceal what's going on and actually helps to bring that veil of secrecy over big investigations, with the result that it is easier to shelve them and for things not to happen. Should one not be looking at a system where sunlight is really used to disinfect, that it isn't so easy to simply classify things so that they're hidden, so that we don't go ahead with actually dismantling the swamps and the various organized crime networks?
Madam, yes, there's a place for classification of information and the processes. But you can extract, and I can almost say, you can create sanitized versions for the purposes of SCOPA. Because in many or most instances, there will be overreach, there will be failures in terms of financial systems, etc. Just by the way, the corruption and so on in the country, that was to obtain financial benefit, huge financial benefit. That cannot be classified because it's public coffers. So what I would say, not trying to break down the one to the benefit of the other, is start communicating between each other. They should be providing you with a risk assessment according to your mandate and what they see on their side. To assist SCOPA, what SCOPA should be utilizing its mandate for, that will complement the work on their side. In my past, 40 years in the police, about what? Since 90, how many years of that now? I've been working more or less at the national level. I was appointed in the Office of the National Commission in 95. So I've got quite a grasp of what is happening at the national level. We're not talking to each other. We are not talking to each other. We're not engaging each other. I'm talking, not writing letters to each other, actually engaging. How can I assist you? Yes, you can't give me what is classified, your agents and informers or whatever. What is the substance that I can use for my mandate within SCOPA? And so also the other mechanisms. So that is, Mr. Chair, if I can, on this question, if I can advise, almost plead, please, we need to break down these silos, but not with a, as soon as you want to break down the whole system, you're going to just receive pushback, from there, because they will cling to their legal mandates and so on. Just start declassifying certain things. If you write a report, maybe a third of the report is classified, the rest of it's not really classified, but in terms of practice, the whole report is classified. Extract out of that what you need for your mandate, and then act on that, and then give feedback as well, because the feedback that comes from have you ever asked from SCOPA side, have you ever given a tasking to intelligence services to detect the following irregularities and dysfunctions from their perspective. Because that is how we should be keeping each other accountable and also tasking each other. As I grew up in the police, it would usually be, or in the intelligence environment, people will come to you, what do you know? What are you talking about? I know nothing. We thought so. You know nothing about it. But what is the tasking? What is the request? What is the need? And that is something that we should rectify. Task intelligence services. Don't merely ask them what do they know, because they most probably never worked on this environment. But task them and hold them responsible to come back to you and put it on the table. They are paid for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My last question, and then I'll allow someone else. In its current format, in your view, would SAPS and the current law enforcement agencies be able to deal with the size of the problem in the energy sector at the moment, including Eskom?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'll give back to you for now.
Thank you very much, Honourable.
Mr. Chair, sorry, maybe just something that you raised. And the answer for it is because our policing models and approaches does not encompass a more risk-based assessment and a more comprehensive approach. We keep on addressing it from a more transactional approach. And the role, you mentioned earlier on that the board was saying, but it's not his responsibility, it's that of SAPS. 80–90% of addressing the risk of threat lies within the accounting officer. Okay, 1 or 2 or 3 of those transactions would be criminal and should be approached by the police. But the rest is management. And that is very specifically true in terms of Eskom. It's the accounting officer's job to go and close the gaps and resolve the vulnerabilities. And not that of the police to come in from external, from a law enforcement perspective to try and close those gaps. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for the...
Honourable Hadebe.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's time for us to go back to the real reason why we are here and focus on the actual task at hand. When we engaged with the former Group Chief Executive, Mr. Andre de Ruyter, he indicated to us that he has furnished SAPS with all the relevant information as it pertains to intelligence operations, and that there was an officer assigned to deal or liaise with him directly. And later on, when we've engaged the National Police Commissioner, it was then discovered that that senior official was yourselves. Now, our interest is to get to understand, as it relates to the allegation that pertains to financial mismanagement and corruption, have you received information in that regard? And what action have you taken in dealing with such? Are you in a position of the so-called intelligence report? What is the status at the time you were in charge and your sudden departure have you taken in dealing with those issues as it relates to the allegations contained and the information at your disposal pertaining to Eskom allegation of financial misconduct? That's my first question.
Thank you, sir. The first thing I did receive, firstly, I want to emphasize, I already explained how I got onto into the process, is via the intervention and the request of retired Major General Boyson. I think it will be appropriate, maybe, if you really want to hear what happened last year, and the fact that the initial team was not established. What really happened there, because I wasn't part of those discussions between him, the National Commissioner, etc. I did, however, from the beginning of July, start to interact on his behalf with Mr. Andre de Ruyter. What I did do, what did happen, I received information, not from Mr. de Ruyter, but from the Fivers Group on allegations, very, very broad allegations, etc. They gave operational reports, very, very operational reports, that I could not at that stage validate. My concern at the time is they came in from the perspective that they are going to run, they're going to use psychological warfare tactics in order to support Mr. de Ruyter. Now, to me, being a police officer, and also with intelligence background, that is very dangerous. Why would you use that kind of tactics? So that immediately contaminated the space. Why would that be necessary? Okay. So yes, I did receive. We looked through it. We could not validate. I requested some validation, just like the unique identification of some of the role players that were alleged, and we could not get part of that. Nonetheless, I did pass this on to the DPCI investigation team working on Eskom. But what we did, we agreed that we had to have a more comprehensive approach and be very careful that we are not taken by an entity on its own. None of this intelligence was actually validated. It's actually done in parallel with intelligence services, which again is a risk. Therefore, again, my submission to the Minister, as well as head of the Hawks, after it became clear that the National Commissioner were not going to establish a proper team for this, that we should be establishing such a team. That did not transpire by March this year. So the information that I received was made operationally available to the investigation team at the Hawks, but also to the team that the National Commissioner established at Eskom, sitting at Eskom, I think it's under the authority of General Jacobs. It was made available to them as well. They're focusing more on the transactional nature of crime, etc. Thank you, sir. Sorry, your question about...
If I hear you correctly, you are saying...
Second, he wants to conclude.
Sorry.
There's a question you missed.
The one part of the financial irregularities, etc. You asked about that as well. I cannot recall anything specifically. Most of the information was about, you can say, the criminality, organized, or very little about the organized crime, but more about the criminality around Eskom, etc. I don't recall anything on the financial irregularities on Eskom. Thank you.
So, if I hear you correctly, you are saying the information at your disposal at the time, you could not validate such, and none of the intelligence information at your disposal was validated. Did that make your work difficult, and what exactly do you mean the information was not validated? Whose responsibility is it to validate such information in order for you to pursue your work?
So thank you very much for that. That is typically what I referred to previously, the role of state security. For instance, they are responsible for our state security agency, SSA, the old National Intelligence. So I worked with them. They were also part of the team when we engaged Eskom. I shared some of this, the information with them in order to validate it. In other words, corroborate it, get substantiating information. And that is where it was just shut down. All cooperation with them, they just shut it down. In other words, they didn't want to deal with it. Now, if you start with a criminal investigation, certain types of investigation, interceptions, intrusion, those are very difficult to do that on low-level cases, etc. Therefore, we said we had to establish a properly constituted team of between stakeholders, from various stakeholders, in order to deal with it and to make sure that we are not being led by the nose on intelligence. Remember, within the intelligence services, There's various mechanisms that will make sure that you authenticate the information, you validate your sources, etc. None of this was in place with the information source that was availed to us from Mr. de Ruyter. I can also not expect that because it doesn't come from the discipline. He doesn't understand that. Thank you.
So what then becomes the responsibility of the person sharing the information with you in terms of the allegation as presented to you in that so-called intelligence report? Was it enough for you to be given that information? There was no expectation of additional information from the former group chief executive or Eskom as an entity?
I'm not sure whether I understand you correctly. Let me answer you on this. In my engagement,
So what I'm trying to say, having received the intelligence report, was there any outstanding information that you required from the person making those allegations, or were you satisfied that the information given to you was enough for you to start with your work? There was nothing outstanding or missing for you to start processing the information at your disposal?
so thank you. All information given to me was incomplete. Okay. You refer to a report. What report are you referring to? Because there's this whole notion.
I'm referring to the intelligence report that was conducted by a private company, Pfizer's report, and we are told that that report was shared with you and you have full access to such a report.
Okay, interesting. I do not know of a report. As I said, I've received various information reports, operational reports. I've not seen a report. After Mr. de Ruyter's attendance of his media, I think it was
ETV
yes,
interview.
that one.
Yes.
After that, I received a WhatsApp from retired Commissioner George Fivers. He said he doesn't know what report Mr. de Ruyter is referring to because he never gave Eskom a report. Neither did they focus on equated the ANC. So Mr. de Ruyter, as he said in his WhatsApp, moet maar pass on. He has to take accountability for his statements. So the whole notion about a report, I don't know, and I've also briefed my management and the National Commissioner, I don't know about a report. There was operational information exchange with me. There might have been other reports that I'm not privy to. But as far as I know, there was not a singular report. Thank you.
Are you saying to us the private company that conducted intelligence operation at Eskom and concluded its work in a form of an intelligence report, and that report was submitted to the group chief executive, you are not in a position of that report, or you were not in a position at the time when you were still active as a police officer. You do not have such intelligence report, and you only became aware that there is a so-called intelligence report that was conducted by a private company, like all of us on the news. Mr. Andre de Ruyter did not at any point present to you an intelligence report from Pfizer's. Is that the case?
He never gave a intelligence report. So I want to differentiate between operational engagement, where information was shared, but a concluded information intelligence report, I have not seen it, and neither have I received it from Mr. de Ruyter. And again,
what exactly did you get?
operational intelligence reports from informers.
I'm specifically asking about the group chief executive interaction with you as the person that was responsible to liaise between Eskom and SAPS. What exactly did you receive from Mr. Andre de Ruyter on behalf of Eskom for you to investigate, and how far did you go investigating what you received? So I'm interested, because now I'm confused. Initially, based on what is before us, is that you have access to the intelligence report. Lately, the SIU has also got hold of such a report that speaks about allegation of certain senior politicians' involvement, and we are not privy to such. All we know is that the report is with you, and the report is with SIU. SIU is still busy with the report. You are saying to us today you don't have such a report. What exactly did you get from Mr. Andre de Ruyter in relation to allegations of financial misconduct and alleged people who happen to hold position of authority and have taken oath in protecting the public purse? We are interested in following the money as it relates to misappropriation of taxpayers' fund. That's the mandate of SCOP. Thank you.
Again, I'm going to re-emphasize, I have not received a report that you're referring to from Mr. de Ruyter. What I did receive, I attended meetings with Andre de Ruyter and the Fivers Group, during which information was shared. It didn't go via Mr. de Ruyter. It was basically came from the Fivers Group. They were talking, they were giving, so no, they will give me some documents on a stick afterwards, etc. So there was, according to me, no singular report coming from Mr. de Ruyter. They might have written it up after I was after I've withdrawn, but I've not received that. What they did have, the first part, I call it the organigram, where they had an elaborate organigram with all the allegations and cartels and so on, which was not substantiated.
So your involvement was based on a meeting you had with Mr. de Ruyter and the Fivers Group. You had meeting and presentation was given, and nothing in terms of a report was given to you. You were promised to be given information on a stick, and that did not happen.
No, sir, you're not listening to what I was saying, please.
Yes.
I said they would provide that to me afterwards, but it was low-level intelligence reports, information reports, source reports, etc. There's not a report from the CEO from Eskom.
So you got information from a private company?
Yes, in the presence of Mr. de Ruyter and in subsequent meetings. But Mr. de Ruyter himself did not finish that report. There was a report that he did share with me that was done by I think, the head of security in terms of widespread fraud corruption, but that was way back in the beginning. That was not based on the Fivers intelligence.
So having worked...
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I think where we're going to need assistance is the timeline of these events. Because our understanding, to build on what you're saying, was that a meeting took place where Mr. de Ruyter raised matters with the National Commissioner. And then the National Commissioner designated yourself. Right. So I think that's where the nub is, because you are now bringing in and introducing an element of Major General Boyson preceding your involvement. So I think the clarity to help Honorable Hatebe's question is, at what point did you come into the Eskom investigation space? 2, who appointed you to it? Because the National Commissioner has never said anything about Major General Boyson. Not a word. It's the first time I'm hearing it, and I'm just going through my notes here. It's not there. Because Honorable Hatebe is correct. Our understanding was that rather, the National Commissioner was approached in a meeting at an academy, and then at that point you were delegated, and then he met with you and gave you the information, including this. But what I'm getting now is that as the FISA's investigation was going on, you were getting regular updates. So I'm just trying to sort out the timeline for us, because I think it's a bit muddy. This was July 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the clarity I just want. I'm sorry, Honorable, to interrupt you.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to try, according to my knowledge. There was a lot of meetings that preceded my involvement in this instance in it. So there were engagements. As I said, there was engagements between the National Commissioner and Major General Boyson, where he requested and actually offered a contract to Major General Boyson to come and lead the Eskom investigations. Okay. Now, was that never, that didn't come out, Mr. Chair? Okay. So that's why I say it might be fruitful, because if you look at the intent that was formulated and that we worked towards, it just never realized. And Major General Boyson will be able to articulate that very, very, because he was directly involved. He went to speak to his group CEO in order to get authority to assist the police in terms of that. He contacted me and asked me to assist, where after the National Commission then said, it's fine, I can continue with it. And I think in August, they actually, how to say, formalized that.
So, having served for so many years in anti-corruption unit and as a brigadier police officer, when you were interacting with this private company, didn't you question the legality of having a private company accessing data of Eskom, with your understanding and what you've always highlighted to us of Eskom, or well, some of the plants in Eskom being a national key point? Did you sought clarity in terms of the legality of the private company having access to a national key point institution in executing your work?
So to be very honest, I didn't need to source clarity. I knew it was not legal, whether it was allowed, and that is why I went and engaged the state security agencies, specifically the counterintelligence environment, to dig into this to see what is behind it. So yes, that is the support I requested from them, and that is the support they did not provide. Thank you.
So you knew that it was illegal. Did you continue engaging with them?
I listened to them, and the understanding was, which I discussed with Fivers, that there is no contractual obligation. Neither am I going to give any taskings, so I'm going to hear what they put on the table and process it for our purposes. But we had to be extremely vigilant, as not just to take any of the information and as fact, because there were doubts. The process and the sources could not be validated.
As a police officer dealing with issues of national security, understanding that someone in your meeting has in his possession illegal information or information contained illegally, did you raise that matter? And how often after your first meeting did you continue to engage with the entity or private company that has information contained illegally? Your engagement with that particular company, knowing the parameters, roles and responsibility of a private company vis-a-vis state security agency and the information obtained from so-called national key point.
Mr. Chair, for me, again, I want to clarify, let's not jump the gun. I didn't say the information was gained illegally. Okay? They might have sources using private intelligence and so on that might have been gained legally. But the essence of employing a company to work on intelligence for Eskom was, to me, highly irregular. Okay, so it's at two levels. It's a role within Eskom, but the transaction information, if I can coin that.
How many times did you interact with them?
So it is. I've had quite a few. Let's say 10 times. Well, it's. I can't remember the exact, but I had various engagements with them, with the intention of hearing what they had to say. That I have not made a determination that was gained illegally.
I'm raising this because earlier on you indicated that you asked whether or not the staff was vetted when you were engaging with the group chief executive. So automatically that will necessarily indicate to me that we are dealing with a person that knows the prescript of the law and the do's and don'ts in terms of doing his work. When you ask the group chief executive, did you also ask him whether or not he was vetted?
It was not vetted.
And I'm saying, did you ask him? And what was his response?
He was not vetted. He told me he's not vetted, and he's not going to submit himself at the end. He's not going to submit himself to the process.
What then becomes your role and responsibility in that regard when you know that you are dealing with Mr. Hadebe, who's not vetted, and Mr. Hadebe is in possession of intelligence information? What then becomes your obligation and responsibility as a law enforcement officer, someone who has taken oath to serve and to protect the country?
Again, two things. Firstly, who appointed you?
Come again?
Firstly, who appointed you, Mr. Hadebe, in this role play that we are doing here? Who appointed you? It was his obligation to ensure that you are security competent, because that's a precondition for the post. Okay.
I understand that part, but you
Yes.
also have a responsibility. Two wrongs don't make one right. If you become aware, I'm asking you, if you become aware that whoever appointed Mr. Hadebe did not ensure that he's vetted, by virtue of those that appointed me, you will also continue with you knowing fully that you are dealing with an individual that you have no surety or certainty in terms of his vetting, because someone appointed him. Does it justify you proceeding with certain issues and allegations of this magnitude?
All right. Firstly, again, let's stick around there, because I did raise this with Minister Pravin Gordhan in the meeting. And his response to it was, but the two of you must sort this out, meaning myself, Mr. de Ruyter.
So, meaning you've indicated to the minister that Mr. de Ruyter is not vetted.
That is correct, and they conceded to it. And then Mr. Pravin Gordhan said, but we must sort it out between myself and de Ruyter, which is not my mandate. So that's the first part of the question. So, Mr. Chair, just for you to understand I can almost say absurdity of what is facing us. Just basic stuff was not put into place. Basic legal requirements. Now, towards the second end of it, the actual classified information. I did not share any classified information with them. Neither did I at that stage perceive any of information, they received this from their own informers and so forth, as being the source, that the source of that was classified, or that per se was when it came into my possession, I classified it as confidential because of even the way the reports were written. You could identify informers, etc.
So if I were to summarize this whole saga, by virtue of having information that is not validated, you could not proceed with investigation. Am I correct to summarize? And for us to be able to ascertain whether or not certain action was taken, this has to be verified by the State Security Agency, which when I asked you, you indicated that it was their responsibility to validate the information at the disposal. At the time of you getting the information and at the time of your retirement, the information at your disposal was not validated and you could not proceed with it. Am I correct in summarizing like that?
No, you're not.
Okay. Please give us the sense of progress made and what, which stage of the investigation when you left the investigation was at.
Ms. Gedebe, can I suggest, let's break your questions into smaller bits, because you almost like you're asking for a whole season of soap operas. The first thing, the involvement of the Fivers Group. I raised that with State Security with the intention of them coming in and taking responsibility to oversee what is going on. Secondly, the information that came in, it wasn't that it was lying there. I availed it to our investigators in order to find if they, in their investigations, came across this and could validate it and say, but listen, this we're interested and this we're interested. That didn't happen. So it's not that it lay idle, but we still had to formally validate it. You understand? That's a formal process you go through, your sources, etc., to make very sure that you are not played. Now, I could not conclude, as I said, I didn't even know there was a final report. If I assume now, there was a final report from the Fivers Group, because I can show you the WhatsApp from Commissioner Fivers, which said he's never given the report to Andre de Ruyter. So that was in, I think, end of February this year. So there might have been work that was done after I withdrew from the process that I weren't privy to. But to summarize it, that what was put on the table could not be directly translated into evidence, into this holistic threat that they were purporting to have, and which they were putting onto the table. That I could find no substantiation. The mere fact of drawing a visual, putting some names on it, and then giving a narrative around that. That's not sufficient for evidence for criminal investigation. But just remember, you've got criminal investigation, which is court-directed. That is a typical docket that we all know, a detective that goes to court. There's also investigations which the intelligence services conduct. That is not always court-directed. It's more risk-based. And that is what I was after, to get the intelligence services in, because they serve Eskom, in order to validate it and make sure that we're not being led by their nose, and whatever comes out of that should actually become a crime intelligence tasking, which we can translate over to evidence.
Hence, I'm saying, you are repeating exactly what I've asked. You are saying the information was not validated and it could not be verified and you could not proceed on those bases.
Proceed with what, sir?
With investigation.
I'm answered you again. Yes, we did proceed on other types, not court-directed.
No, I'm specifically referring to the information provided to you by Fivers, which relates to the allegation made by Mr. Andre de Ruyter. You could not proceed with that. That's what I'm asking.
I'm answering you again. I availed that information to the DPCI, people investigating the Eskom matters, I do not know that they found any value in that information. So as such, if you look at the Fivers information in isolation, that was at that stage not something we could work on.
Exactly.
Standing alone. No.
Exactly, Chair. That's where I was getting at, and thank you for responding. We are dealing with unvalidated information that could not be substantiated.
DPCI is appearing next week.
Yes.
Because my understanding is that whatever was received, because I'm now skeptical of calling it a report, so whatever was received,
It's an organogram.
right,
That's what he said. He
Was-
received an organogram.
that salad was sent to DPCI. But where I'm still not clear is the establishment of the Major General Boyson team. And at what point were you brought in? And secondly, maybe to follow up on what Honorable Lateb is saying, on what basis would you have been invited to a meeting of Fivers and de Ruyter? Is this part, because we now know that Mr. de Ruyter commissioned a private investigation, which he made mention of in one or two meetings and informed the then board chairperson, the prof on it. So were you meeting during the investigation that the Fivers group was doing, that was privately funded with some millions? So that's where I am. Were they sharing an investigation with you, or were they sharing bits and pieces of outcomes or collected information?
Mr. Chair, let me just get in again. I was not initially brought in by the National Commissioner. The National Commissioner consulted retired Major General Johan Boyson with the intention of employing him. Actually, it went to as far they drafted a contract to employ him to lead this investigation team on Eskom. That would happen, I think, end of May or beginning of June last year. Now, General Boyson called me because he knew I was about to submit my papers for early retirement last year already. And he asked me, please, if he takes this, he wants me to assist him. Because of my previous involvement with the anti-corruption task team and the various years of involvement in the field. He didn't know about my direct involvement in the investigations per se, but he knew, we've known each other for a while. Now, from that, nothing happened. Then, if I remember, the last week in June, last year, suddenly there was, I think it was stage 6, load shedding and so on. And apparently, I can't testify, but apparently there was pressure from the president to say, what is happening? Why do we have these blackouts? Then suddenly the National Commissioner again contacted him and wanted him to fly down and speak to Mr. de Ruyter immediately.
Contacted who? The National Commissioner contacted who?
Boyson.
Boyson. Or
General Boyson said, but he tried to come down, but there was no flights available. I think it's also one of the airlines was, I don't know whether strike or they were grounded, but there literally weren't any flights available. Then Major General Boyson asked the National Commissioner if he could ask me to engage Mr. de Ruyter on the interim, given that he was going, I think, for 3 weeks leave overseas and was not going to be available. So that is how I got involved. My involvement, I think, was only formally ratified, if you want to call it, by the National Commission about a month later. Does that assist? Okay.
Okay. Chair, I'm interested in understanding when and who did you contact in the state security agents to request validation of the information at your disposal so that we can approach the relevant person in this regard and understand why why the entire information was not validated, so that we are able to follow this allegations as it pertains to financial misconduct. Are you in a position to share with the committee at what stage and who exactly did you contact to request assistance with the validation of the information?
Mr. Chair, for me, you're creating the understanding as if it was separate events. I've maintained a very strong working relationship with various agencies, including the State Security Agency. Remember, they were part of my team at the Anti-Corruption Task Team. So it's not like events happening. So I liaised with them, I communicated with them. In the specific engagement, I actually...
Tony?
He came to the meeting. At the same meeting, I had Mr. Donovan Nell from Counterintelligence SSA. Mr. Donovan Nell, yes. Now, subsequently, he was and I've had years of good cooperation with him. And then I think 2 days later, he just shut down all cooperation with us.
Well, you can wrap it up, and then we will...
Interaction. Firstly, are you aware of the Section 34 of Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, PRECA in short? The responsibility placed on the Group Chief Executive to inform and submit information as it relates to crime. Are you aware of that section?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure which version is on the internet available, but I drafted the initial guidelines for the reporting of that, which should be on the DPCI's website.
Yeah. So in your interaction with Mr. de Ruyter, did you ascertain whether or not he has followed Section 34 and reported the matter as prescribed?
During my engagement with him, he has not yet done that, but he has reported the matter to various instances, as you refer to as well, communication with the National Commissioner, etc., etc. Now, if you look at the implication or the understanding of PRECA, it was not designed to catch out people. Did he report the matters, his concerns, etc., to law enforcement? He did. Did they initially follow the administrative process of taking down the prescribed form? My understanding is no, they did that later on for his lawyers.
So I understand, and I'm not saying we're trying to catch up anyone. The law places certain responsibility on certain individual holding offices. Hence, I asked if you are aware of such provisions. And the good thing is that you are saying you have drafted those regulations. So you understand exactly the context surrounding such, the spirit and the letter of the law. You understand that. And you have responded by saying, at the time, he had not reported. My follow-up question is that you know this how, because you have engaged with him and asked if he has done it. Otherwise, how would you have known that he has not done so?
Because we've engaged, and yeah, it was discussed. Now, can I, and again, I'm going to, what I picked up is it was almost a vindictive approach. You have to report. Not the fact, giving acknowledgement of the fact that he did report it to the minister, which was his person of authority above him, and he did report it to the National Commissioner and various other entities. They did not follow the administrative route of taking down the prescribed form and getting a reference. Okay, so we did discuss that, and I urged him, yes, make the formal report. Okay, but that was yeah. I could see there was a lot of, he was not in a good space with the board as well as with the minister. So yeah, let's leave it there.
For the matter to be addressed and to be dealt with, certain processes ought to be followed. It does not exempt an individual by virtue of having reported the matter to the executive authority to say you have done your work. Otherwise, then why do we have these laws if they are not going to be followed? I'm asking this because it's a serious matter. If we are serious in dealing with corruptions, we must implement the laws that are governing how we operate. Otherwise, I would have said today, we have dealt with you, then there's no need for us to pursue the matter further.
So you're 100% correct. So yes, the other formal processes I've answered you as far as I know. At that stage, they have not completed the process. I didn't say you didn't have to complete it. I urged them to complete it as well. So as far as I know, he went to the DPCI because in terms of the Act, it should be taken down by a designated DPCI officer to take it down. Apparently that did happen. He did it through his lawyers, but that was later on, after the, it wasn't last year during our initial
It
engagements.
was on April 22, the day before he appeared before us, where he submitted the same statement that he presented here. So which the Honorable Hadebe draws us to the prescribed form and process. But what the head of the Hawks confirmed here was that the day before he appeared here, he then handed them over the same statement that he presented to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thanks, Chair. I'm satisfied, and I've in a better position now to be able to recommend a way forward in this matter. And
We'll do that at the end.
yes, I'm
Still
saying,
colleagues.
yeah, it shouldn't have taken us this long. Had you had appeared before then, perhaps we would have been far on these matters. To a certain extent, okay, Mandival.
I think you're singing from the same hymn sheet. He is also stopping at certain points in your. There's a request for a health break. Colleagues, can we take 5 minutes? And when we come back, Bab Somyo, you will have the platform. So 5-minute comfort break. All right, thank you very much. Okay, Bab Soumya, over to you.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much, colleagues. The legal section of Parliament, SIU presence, Mr. Berger and his legal team. Thank you very much that you have ultimately made it that you come to this committee. You know, I had a wrong perception that you are somewhat evasive through correspondences that we came across when we're trying to get you here. So I was wrong. And I was preparing for a very evasive individual. I've learned that that's not the case. I appreciate that. So far, you have confirmed to us that you never came across a report. Is that so?
So let's clarify when we refer to a report, the report, because there's many references made to report. I've not received a report from, and I mean in a singular, a sort of final report from Mr. de Ruyter. I did receive a report that was drafted way back, even before my engagement, from the head of security. But relevant to FIVES, I've not seen a single report. Neither did FIVES confirm that there was such a report submitted.
Thank you very much. We have had an interaction with Mr. FIVES. Is that the case?
Just understand, have I had interaction? Yes, I've had various interactions with retired Commissioner George FIVES.
The basis of that interaction, in your understanding, was informed by an investigation taking place at Eskom?
Sir, the basis of that was happened after I was introduced. I knew Commissioner FIVES from before, but introduced within context of Eskom work they were doing on Eskom. What exactly they were investigating was unclear and still remains unclear because I've not been part of the tasking of it. Also, just something, Mr. Chair, that I would note that maybe clarity should it just be sought. That Mr. de Ruyter commission the FIVES team through which process? Secondly, or was it the FIVES group or team that engaged Mr. de Ruyter with information? I think that would be material, because even though private funds were used, it was still to the benefit of Eskom. Now, again, I know the people involved. Remember, this is a country concern. And people will, the funders, for instance, the people are concerned about what is going on, and they would assist where it can. So it will be prudent just to get clarity on what the process was. Did they approach the writer with information, or did he commission them? If so, what was his tasking? What was his request for it, and vice versa?
Yes. You said to us already that what you came across was not a conclusive report in your understanding of both criminal investigations nor state security.
If I understand it correctly, nothing I found coming from the 5S group was conclusive. It was, how can I say, it was in process. It was building up to a bigger picture from their perspective. But not in the sense that you would expect, like any other forensic firm, that they will provide you with a conclusive report, no.
Thank you very much. As such, you made reference to the State Security Agency in terms of what we had at hand.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And in your own assessment, when you have had such engagements, you made reference to a psychological tactics which somewhat in a prescriptive format to support Mr. de Ruyter at Eskom.
That is correct. That was put on the table by Mr. Tony Botha. That was to support Andre de Ruyter, which I found if they were busy with, that's why I'm hesitant to use the word investigation. They were busy with something, but this is usually not part of investigation. It's what we used to refer to in the old days as Stratcom. You know the concept of Stratcom, strategic communication? Mm-hmm. Is usually when you spin perceptions of information to create certain perceptions, etc. It's not necessarily bad, but it does not have a role. When we walked out in January, even General Jan Boysen, he said, but Jap, how do we build a docket or a case on this? It muddies the water, especially if they put that out as part of their mission. So that becomes troublesome when you start dealing with evidence.
Thank you very much. How long have you been a policeman?
40 years, 6 months, and I think 8 days.
Aye. Indeed, you had to earn your retirement.
So yes, and the type of work I do is I work at the strategic level, and usually I need about 18 months to 2 years to establish new components. I established the anti-corruption task team, etc., etc. So it takes about 18 months traction to implement, if it goes well, to 2 years, even up to 3 years. I literally ran out of time, career-wise, but there was no insight or appetite of police management to take any of the matters that I put on the table forward. There was let me leave a concept in your midst. It is end of the 90s, government developed a few scenarios. Global village, African hub, frozen revolution. So guess in which scenario we ended up in. It's the one where we've got a lot of policies, a lot of documents floating around, none of it is implemented. So that is more or less where we are. We get approval from cabinet and parliament and so on, but then what happens afterward? We don't align ourselves operationally, departments or agencies, etc., in order to achieve that. So, for me to take anything forward, I ran out of ground.
No, fine. It means now you are familiar, which was at the time probably of the start of your involvement in the police, was an attempt in follow through of social security, of national security standards as total onslaught. Total onslaught.
Oh, yes. the rooi gevaar.
You,
Do you
you're
remember
aware,
that? Yes, yes, sir.
you're fully aware of that approach. You're fully aware of that approach, total onslaught. Yes.
I know, okay, I don't mean, I'm aware of it. I don't know what you know, fully aware. So I didn't draft it. So, yes, I'm aware of it.
So you were involved at the time of total onslaught in the instances of national security.
Yes, sir. I joined the police in 82, 23rd of December.
So I'm looking to the phrases that you use. My interest is on this psychological nature of tactical involvement in matters of both fighting crime, support individuals who are seen as in that kind of a fight. You seem to upscale that kind of a scenario into the level of assessing the success leading to finalizing a docket for a case. What do you think was the main cause for wanting to use this kind of an approach with Eskom?
So, okay, firstly, the term psychological warfare was used by Mr. Tony Oosthuizen as tactics that they are going to deploy. I'm familiar with the approach from, as you coined it, way back, the total onslaught, and in terms of international practices, etc. I also know what the downside of it is. I've actually got no idea. I can speculate, which I would not like to speculate, but I've got no idea why. And why did they feel? Because the words that we use is to support Andre. Why would it be needed to support Andre? From my perspective, okay, I can come up in defense of the Fivers team and de Ruyter. And they were not served by state security. The question is, should the effort that they took to go into this, in other words, go to alternative structures, I'm using words now from the total onslaught period, now alternative ways of achieving, getting intelligence on the table, whilst our intelligence services was obliged by the law and the Constitution to provide it. But somehow it just went by us, and it created this void where they were putting information on the table. But again, that is, I would not like to speculate why they did it.
Yeah, with your experience, one appreciates your analogy and the fact that you didn't want to drop the ball in action. You continued to provide that kind of support. You continue to provide that kind of support such that you use this kind of an approach as a yardstick going forward in terms of that report to ask the National Security Agency for its own verification. And you end up by saying, when that was provided, an individual approached, closed up, and there was never any other interaction.
So yes, I approached them in terms of who and what the Fivers team is, because getting them involved, as the chairperson previously referred to, and Mr. Gadebe, there are issues of classified information, etc., and it seems to me they had free access to it. I didn't even see that information at the time. I didn't ask them, because otherwise I would have been soliciting through a illegitimate party access to that information. So to me it was strange. To me it was a security risk, and that lies within the mandate of state security. So I approached them to look at the 5S group, and I declared that they have stated they want to use psychological warfare, to me unknown, but I saw a red light at that stage. And strangely enough, they just withdrew.
Yeah. So in your continuation to be party of that work, you have had this sort of practical experience. Then the closure driven into, was it driven by them, and it drove you to as well accept that they have closed down, closed off, probably to be accurate, and did you see necessity to take this further, probably to your commissioner or whoever could assist you in this regard?
Sir, I did engage the National Commission prior to this, and I asked him to open up communication avenues with the DG of State Security for cooperation, which he did not do. I raised the issue of involving other partners, specifically with the head of the Hawks, that we had to have a multidisciplinary. I did not place the specific issue on the table with the Hawks. So in actual fact, as I said, I was isolated in the police for the past or last 2 years. The minister asked me in January. He said, "But who? Berger, who you report to?" I said, "Minister, I don't know. I've been waiting for more than a year." So there's no organizational support to me. It was I was supposed to report to the Deputy National Commissioner of Crime Detection, where there wasn't one after Njinga left. It was just a void. So the typical, what you would assume that would have been an organizational structure, it wasn't there. So it does not take a very intelligent person to deduct that, I've been isolated and they were not in support of anything that I did. It's, yeah. Therefore, my early retirement, which was approved, and which I'm now on early retirement.
Okay. Validation, which is a necessary process on the authenticity of any information. So you say, in all what we have, in all what we hear, in all what we is talked about, in your standards, based on your experience, is not worth it enough to be pulled through for the standard, as you confirmed, that you could probably take it further for other instances.
So if you work with intelligence, you work with information, any information has value. But you have to determine the source. If the source is unknown, you start, is there other sources that provide the same information? Then you can start validating and evaluating the information. If you can't determine the source, you have to look at let's call what we know about the environment and the probability and the value that information might have. So that's the whole process. But again, I was functioning outside of the intelligence structures, and what I wanted is to push this through the formal structures, for the specific reason also to get them on board. Because transactionally, I might be able to deal with something. But if you see the volumes of information that will be coming, not only from them, from other sources as well, we had to reignite the intelligence services and processes in order to deal with this kind of information. And that didn't happen.
Lastly, you love the work. You love the work. A committed policeman who had to retire early after the involvement into this kind of onerous task to unearth corruption at Eskom. Are you retiring as a broken man who felt that isolation, who had a feeling that your intricate analytical capabilities were not utilized in terms of your advices, the way you are encapsulating it here to us, importantly, to have that contribution in the entity that ought to provide energy and the sustenance of the economy of the country.
Am I a broken man? No. I'm looking forward and actually doing now what I wanted, or having a personal life. I've never been married because of the pressures of the work. That's part of it. But I now I am exploring my life. Now, did I have to retire? The answer is no. Yes, from a personal perspective, there was no further value, opportunity to add value. And I've already fought against my organization most of my life. Now, I was a police officer for 40 years. I was a colonel for 20 years of those 40 years. I think most people thought my first name was Colonel. So we can joke about it, but there's no career opportunities. People of the organization, they do not favor you if you work on corruption. Definitely not. So it is going to have a look at some of our investigators and so forth. Now, I was how to say, in a good position. I was a colonel for 20 years. I know captains and warrant officers. There's warrant officers that's been warrant officers for 30 years. That is an untenable situation in the South African police service. It's crazy. It is, and it's not that it's I attended as part of our, let's call it farewell. The National Commissioner called everyone that went on early retirement at the end of June. And he wanted to know why are the people leaving. I think there was 288. There's more now, and my understanding is they are not approving any of those. The people are fed up about as one of them would put it, I'm not going to work in this mess anymore. And this is lieutenant colonels at station level, etc. And it's fine to hear it, and you think about the police and so on, but if you see the father in front of you, the individual, the trauma is in. Really, I would, let me put it another way, I will not be able to go and motivate for new recruits to join the police at this stage.
Chair, in just appreciation that even if you haven't declared it, but the intention was clear that you don't want to be party to psychological warfare. You don't want to be party to psychological warfare. And persuasion could not defeat your conscience around such. and you moved further to ensure that what you had as a report, for your own credibility and for the credibility of the system that you have worked for years, the report that you have, for you to move forward with it, must be fully validated. So those two things for me, listening to you now, they really make you a policeman who would get into good judgment at the time. That the necessity of fighting crime is the basis of credible information, validated information, and through that, justice could prevail.
So that is correct. I asked them for training, just to that first part of your statement, on psychological warfare. What is it about? Because I wanted to see what they put on the table, what the intent is. Because remember, if I want to go forward and there might be criminality involved, that is where I formulate the intention to commit the crimes. But we shut it down because it wasn't forthcoming. Also invited state security to it, to assess and understand what is going on. Remember, if you work the environment, you have to understand what you're dealing with. And in essence, corruption is usually a two-way game. Even your witness is usually the other part of the corruption. So you need to understand, and to me that's the essence. Understand who you're dealing with in order to ensure that there's integrity in your processes, credibility, that you can produce information that can be acted on, that's actionable, but also that can become evidence in a court.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Somya. Honorable Pukas, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the Brigadier. Yes. I just have, I think, 2 or 3 small questions. And the question that I ask in all my engagements with this Eskom thing is that, Brigadier, you referring to the people who fund the intelligence report as people of concern. Who are they?
Ma'am, I didn't refer to them as people of concern, but the fact that private security or entities were involved in issues of national security, to me that is a concern. I don't know who the funders are. I can speculate, but I don't know who the funders are. So it's a process, to me, that it was actually allowed in our face, whilst we're supposed to have protective security, protective intelligence. This happened. So
You never ask Mr. de Ruyter or Fivers or who was sponsoring that 50 million? Never. Not once.
Ma'am, yes, I did.
And?
Would you like me to put the names on the table?
Possible.
No, I'm not going to disclose any names because I've not engaged with them. Neither do I see that as, that's my referral earlier on, is the citizens of the country are concerned and they might have been lobbied into a space that they think they are assisting and lobbying. So I would not like to mention any names because I have not validated that.
But you know the names.
No, I don't know the names. I know there were 1 or 2 names that were mentioned.
Okay. Did you ever, in one of the engagements with Mr. de Ruyter, ask Mr. de Ruyter why is doing a private or why is he opting for a private investigation and not just go to the normal security processes? And what was his response?
Ma'am, yes, I did ask him. And His response was, but these people are willing to work and they're willing to provide it on the table. And be honest, intelligence services did not serve him. They did not support him. But also on the other side, neither did he engage them. So that, Mr. Chairperson, is one of the primary, if I could suggest, I don't want to script your work, but it is our intelligence services and our security cluster is in dire straits. We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And this is, don't look at Andre de Ruyter and what happened. He didn't create this. I think he might have naively accepted the job of a CEO in the space, but this was pre-existing to his appointment. And that we need to take into account, because even with de Ruyter and him now leaving and so on, the current CEO and chairpersons and so on, they have to deal with the same. So what are we doing about it? So also my previous reference is to go and find out whether he appointed them or tasked them, whether they offered their services. So I don't know. I don't know. I never went into that level of detail with him. But we should ask that. But again, I want to, because I know some of the people who were supporting, they did it really from an openness and they wanted to support and help, which might have been misdirected. Thank you, ma'am.
Are we speaking now about Fivers? Did he approach them or what you are saying?
I articulated it early on. We must just find out whether Fivers approached Mr. de Ruyter or whether Mr. de Ruyter tasked them or contracted them. Obviously, it was funded from private means.
So, according to you, Mr. de Ruyter did start first with the normal security processes and he was not satisfied?
No, ma'am, I did not say that.
Saying that, I was asking, why did Mr. de Ruyter not just start with the normal security processes?
My understanding was he did not start with it, but he was not served. Again, it's a question of who initiates this. He didn't trust the security space. Can I also just, what you need to understand is the context, a lot of context around what we're talking about. You've listened to the Zondo Commission and the atrocities and involvement of state security in state capture. Now, even myself as a CEO, if I was a CEO, I would have thought twice before I engaged them. But that is the legal processes or the prescripts. We're not adhering to it. Go back. We're not adhering to it. We're not cleaning up what should be cleaned up. So that is really something I think that this committee can. How do we make sure that our people and personally our CEOs are in peril? So they need to be supported. So yeah, if you can get that right, I think we'll move forward. Remember, if a wheel turns, even if there's rust, the rust starts to, maybe it's squeaky in the beginning, but the rust starts to move away. And then you can just add oil.
Maybe there's a misunderstanding, Brigadier. Verstaan je Afrikaans? Oké. Wat ek verstaan is dat ek het gevra, het meneer de Ruyter eerste na die polisie bijvoorbeeld gegaan en hy was nie tevrede met hulle se hulp nie. Is dit wat ek verstaan? Of met die proses nie?
Nie wat ek verstaan, nie wat ek van weet nie, hy het die klagtes. He made it's called the issues at the end of the day that they found. He made that known, he engaged the National Commission, but that was last year. What about the previous 2 years? Being served in terms of protective security, in terms of your advisory services from state security, that's an ongoing process. It's not only when there's scrum committed, it's actually to assist with the governance of an entity, pointing out risks. Also to be preventative and proactive, not only to be reactive. And that is against state security. As far as I know, no. When I raised it again with him, I drafted even letters for him for the engagement to ask them for a security risk assessment. He never proceeded with that, as far as I know.
Brigadier, do you agree that in the absence of not communication, assumptions will be made?
Yeah, to me, just understand again, if you can, in the absence of communication, assumptions around, that is how humans function.
Reason why I'm asking is that our first invitation to you, Escopa, was on the 7th, was for the 7th of June 2023. You did not attend, except for the reasons that you gave to the speaker on why you don't want or you did not attend. What was the main reason for not honoring that invite?
Ma'am, firstly, it was an invite. I was not compelled. Now, as you would have seen, what transpired from, I was misrepresented by the National Commissioner. So in other words, I was functioning in a relatively hostile space. I was not going to be supported. Now, I've got a legal representative here today. If I was going to respond then, I would have had to use a legal representative by SAPS. Do you think my rights or would have been protected? No. No. So we had a quick discussion over coffee. Part of that is summons me. It was not no disregard, but the first principle is, and again, you are politicians. Okay, the state capture here in the country, there's been huge political involvement and abuse of political power. Now, that said, it's not a reflection on SCOPA per se, but what we have to make sure is that we protect our investigative processes, criminal investigations, again, against possible undue influence. That's why I value your letter that you sent last week, sir, and because that was, as soon as we create a precedent where the protection of our investigators might be compromised. So that was my primary concern. Secondary concern is me coming out. Remember, I did deal with a lot of witnesses and informers and so forth. And initially, hopefully I've managed that risk. Being on public camera and so on identifies you. You don't know who I am until you see me, oh, but that guy, I saw that guy at that, at that meeting. That could compromise. Okay. Now, I'm not in that undercover or whatever, but still working with our witnesses, exposing our investigators or individuals involved, such as me, might pose a risk for witnesses and whistleblowers, etc. So that was the second part. I think I listed it as number 4. The other I articulated once a mandate. The second was the roles of other oversight mechanisms. And again, I'm pro oversight, but we have to understand. The auditor, let me give you, was the Auditor General functioning throughout state capture? Yes, they brought out reports. How was it then possible for state capture to have happened? Okay, it's a rhetorical question, but what I want to articulate with that is whatever oversight we have, whatever tests and balances we have, that was circumvented. Or they've become so routine, it doesn't actually deal with the actual issues that we should be tackling. We are not looking at the right things. And the last comment on that in terms of oversight mechanisms is we look at the function. Remember, not one of our departments, if you take a justice system, you have to have investigation or somewhere to lay a complaint, someone to deal with the complaint, investigate it, then it goes to the MPA, then it goes to justice. If they're successful, it goes to correctional services. So there's a value chain cutting across all our departments. Same with every single concern of government. It's cross-cutting in nature. But when we audit or when we provide oversight, we tend to look only at the function or the individual department. We all said we have to have an integrated approach. We're not having oversight to ensure that the departments are actually doing that, appropriate with the stakeholder departments on that specific issue. Thank you, ma'am.
Then, in appreciating the fact that you say that you respect oversight, in your personal view, this exercise of SCOPA or interaction of SCOPA with the people that the writer named in his report, how do you feel about it? Are we in our mandate, or how do you feel? Can we change something, or personally? Not, yeah.
Ma'am, in terms of you have to understand the context. Was Eskom a de Ruyter failure or a security failure of government? What would your response on that one be? That's also rhetoric, maybe.
Yeah. Chair, die feit dat u vir ons 7 maande laat wag het om hier te kom. Wat is uw view op die vergadering? Was het zo erg? Of ek verstaan wat u gesê het voorheen. Dan die laaste en ek vra som nou die twee saam is, I want to change my question from are you bitter now, whilst you are retiring. I want to ask, in trying to fight corruption for 40 years as a policeman, do you think you are retiring now on a low?
So dubbeldoor vraag. You're right. The on a low? No. Do I believe what I did? Yes. Do I still believe? Yes. Was I successful, I want to say, in everything I did? Did I achieve everything I set out to achieve? The answer is no. Some of it, and remember, I worked in a high-risk environment, so I could not be successful in everything. No. But I'm content I did what I could. Was there more? Yes. There's still more that can be done. But the environment, remember, don't underestimate the fact that we are still under capture. We have not been freed. And I forgot to say early on, the whole aspect of competence. Mr. Chair, there's really a serious deficit in terms of competence. It is. Sorry, the first part of your question. So bitterness, I've said no. I've gone on. Remember, if a soldier goes to war and is shot, he can't be bitter about it because more or less that's what happens in war. All right. So the fact that I've been isolated and so on, you take it with a job. I didn't expect anything more. I didn't expect when I started with the corruption work that I was going to be placed on a pedestal or anything. No, it's dirty work. Early on, someone asked me that I enjoy. Ma'am, working with corruption is not enjoyable. But it's something that was placed on my table and that I did. Okay, and it was only 20 years of the 40 years on corruption.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I've got very brief questions just for clarity from issues that have been raised so that we can see how we take this forward. All right. In the first instance, Mr. de Ruyter indicates that Eskom was bleeding 1 billion rands per year, losing 1 billion rands in a year in the allegation set that he made. Did he communicate that to you?
Mr. Chair, I cannot, because my focus was not the financials of Eskom. He might have communicated that, but it wasn't communicated in terms of substance. I also heard about it in the media, that were bleeding. If you ask me where were they bleeding from, I don't know.
Okay, but wouldn't there be a correlation between the financial losses and the criminality that he was speaking about, to the extent to which intelligence was being gathered?
So can I warn against an assumption, as my esteemed colleague already referred to? Not all financial losses is criminal, it's mismanagement. It's a lot of mismanagement in Eskom. That was my understanding. A lot of mismanagement, it was not necessarily criminal. Now, again, the risk is that we criminalize it, therefore I don't have to take responsibility from a governance perspective in dealing with it. So it's two separate sides of the coin.
Now, fair enough, but the trigger for us to, well, probably trigger is not the right word to use with the policeman. The trigger for us to engage with Mr. de Ruyter is a letter that we had received from Honorable Hadebe in response to the interview. And in large part, the interview was about corruption, financial mismanagement, and so on. So our assumption here is that he was speaking about Eskom losing 1 billion rands, and of course you've just said something about AG, so that's something to look at. I'm trying to understand the nature of the report that he presented to you. Or is what he says in the interview somewhat different to what he would have reported to yourselves? Because we are wanting to gauge where this 1 billion rand is. Where are these losses? Where do the holes need to be plugged? If it's mismanagement, sort that out. If it's corruption, the necessary processes. So he places a figure in the public discourse and saying, I would imagine the culmination of the issues at Eskom are resulting in a 1 billion rands loss. I'm just trying to, I would imagine if I'm reporting crime, I would put that to the law enforcement agencies to say, look, we're losing 1 billion rands because of all these things, which are included but not limited to mismanagement.
So just to the writer did not provide me with a report on that. So that disclaimer, we've already discussed that. I do not recall those aspects being core in the other information. It was more low-level issues. But again, I'm working from recollection. You need to understand more from a business model perspective how diverse Eskom is. If for instance, I had a discussion with him on does he contribute and maintain organized crime? Mr. de Ruyter looked at me shocked and said, but what do you mean? I asked him, what happens to the non-ferrous metals? I'm just going to use figures now. For instance, they would discard 20 tons of ferrous metals, must be much more, but just for argument's sake, 20 tons of non-ferrous metal. They've got a service provider who they will provide it to, and because that's how the process is set up. So I asked him, how many of your precious metals actually reaches that service provider? The indications I got, for instance, if there's 20 tons that's supposed to reach the service provider every year, it's about 3 tons. Where does the other 17 tons go to? Those are also losses because it doesn't go through a legal process. So what I'm just saying is, yes, there's criminality involved in that as well. Could be corruption involved as well. But it's not as simplistic on one whole. It's how the systems were set up. The systems were set up in order to support criminality. There's a lot of allegations about the maintenance people, for instance, setting up their own support. So they knew exactly what the budget was for maintenance. So when the maintenance budget was, said that it's going to run out or they're going to lose that, the specific environment broke down in order to utilize that maintenance. So there's much more complexity in looking at all the losses of Eskom. So maybe ask Mr. de Ruyter, how did he get to that figure? I don't know.
Right. Mr. de Ruyter makes the allegation that there's 2 senior politicians. I know there's issues around investigations and naming people. I won't go to that. But what I want to get a confirmation of is, did he report that there was 2 senior politicians involved in the Eskom corruption?
Again, information that we received did not come from Mr. de Ruyter himself. It came from the 5S group. So it was in his presence, so he also mentioned it. There were that allegations, yes.
So those allegations were made?
Yes.
All right. It's just that it's confusing because Mr. de Ruyter came here to a parliamentary hearing and he spoke in broad strokes, that he had engaged you, Now, if the information is coming from 5S, that's so totally different outlook. It goes to the PRECA issues that you spoke about. The confirmation is there that allegation was made by 5S.
So it might have been, remember, there's a lot of perspectives on the table, so he might have had his own perspectives. The one I remember was specifically the cartels that was mentioned. I know that was also carried in the media and involvement. Thank you, sir.
You spoke about vetting. We've got serious issue with vetting here. Our records will show. Now, Mr. de Ruyter, as you said, he said he was not going to subject himself to that process of vetting. In one way or the other, he confirmed the same to us. So what I'm trying to get at, Mr. de Ruyter gets appointed as a CEO, he must go through a vetting process. He doesn't want to do that, but at the same time, he wants to gain services from the State Security Agency. How was that going to work? Because you said, again, that he was not being serviced, right? How would he have been serviced if he was not cooperating with the State Security Agency?
So the simple thing is, how can you receive a security briefing about a national key point, about national critical infrastructure, which is classified by law, if you're not security competent, in other words, not vetted? So it's a chicken and the egg. It's just a disaster situation. That's why we're sitting here, isn't it?
I understand that. I'm in agreement with you. What I'm saying is, and I'm not vindicating SSA here, what I'm saying, if SSA must service Eskom, part and parcel of them being able to provide information to Mr. de Ruyter is through him being vetted. And he is categoric that he will not subject himself to vetting. Does he not create then the stumbling block to him receiving the services that he requires? Because he is closing himself out from the processes of getting that information.
Agreed, sir. So that means the previous 2.5 years, no one cared about that. That's actually what the practical implications are. So your assumption is correct. This discussion she had with me towards the end of last year, okay, which was, how long was he already in office? Why wasn't that a concern? Why wasn't it raised by State Security to his minister that the fact that he's not complied yet with his security clearance? What Mr. de Ruyter did do after I supported him, he did write a letter and asked for a whole vetting process to start with his personnel, specifically at Megawatt Park. There was a lapse for a few weeks, and then people started to complete the forms and partake in the system. I think 1 or 2 people also resigned. So he did start enacting it for the Megawatt Park, but it was not a normal practice.
I can tell you that that matter served before us here quite early, having raised it with SSA because in 2014 cabinet took a decision that all persons, including CEOs, those in the SCM space must be vetted. And we raised that matter way before these engagements have started. So I'm saying it is issues which would have surfaced prior to the engagements that you had. And we had the then Deputy Minister of State Security appearing before us and categorically telling us that Mr. de Ruyter does not want to be vetted. So I'm saying to you that the relationship between Mr. de Ruyter and SSA was a... English fails me here.
Can I propose a word?
Yeah.
Disastrous?
Yes, well, disastrous works, but I'm saying in the course of work, it may have not been interactive to the extent to which everybody did what they wanted to do. And the major issue, I don't see how state security would have briefed somebody who was not vetted, who was refusing to be vetted. This is not to vindicate SSA because they've got lapses on so many other areas of vetting where they're supposed to, Transnet and so on. But I'm trying to put it to you that the services which were due to Mr. de Ruyter were collapsed by him and his attitude towards vetting. And this is a matter that we've put to him. So it's not a, I couldn't be bothered much because he doesn't like me much either. So that's also okay. But at a professional level and an assessment level, as this committee, we have put it to him. So I just wanted to react to the issue of service that you put, that it may have been a missed opportunity, which then has the complicating factor of bringing us to the issue I'll raise as soon as I take Honorable Hadebe. Just stand by.
And I wanted to assist you on that. When the same question was put to him, firstly, state security agent was stationed at Megawatt Park to assist with vetting. They literally took their stuff and went there. When Mr. de Ruyter was asked, he said there were a lot of information required from him. It was a tedious process. He could not forward all the necessary information. I even said, from the time you were asked until the time you write a resignation letter, does it require that much time for you to give the necessary information? He then said, I did not see a need because I'd already handed my resignation. So it was him refusing to submit the requisite information under the disguise of that it's a lot of information required from him, despite the fact that state security agents was stationed at Megawatt Park for that exercise.
Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. And that was towards the end of last year. Is that correct? So the point I want to make, what about the previous 2 years, 2.5 years, or 3 years? I don't know. I don't know how long his tenure was before that. But so at the end of the day, who does Mr. de Ruyter report to? Who was supposed to have to ensure the compliance with his contract? Was it the chairman of the board? Was it the minister? So there was lapses and oversight, functional oversight at higher levels.
No, we are in agreement with that, but as I'm saying, there have been efforts from this committee on the vetting issue at Eskom, including the vetting of Mr. de Ruyter, and he was categoric, despite those efforts. The word I was looking for is that he placed the relationship in an invidious position with that kind of attitude. Because then the resultant of that is we are now settled with the private, because I'm not even sure I can call this an intelligence gathering exercise that Fivers was doing, but that's the word that's been thrown out there. But where my issue is that private persons or groups or entities were given access to Eskom information. So it landed in private hands. as a response to a refusal to be vetted and as a response to the lapses at SSA, the whole value chain, the whole ecosystem. Because Mr. de Ruyter categorically says he commissioned that, that's the evidence is placed before us, that he commissioned this private investigation. So on the issue where you say we must check whether there was an approach or not, he commissioned this, but we can always verify that. And that's where I've had issue. That in one way or the other, then you were saddled with the CEO who put at risk the entity at which he was supposed to, uphold fiduciary responsibilities of protecting that institution. So that's in reaction to that. I'm just going to go very quickly to, I was taking notes as you spoke. So, just for clarity, you presented whatever you were told or given to DPCI and State Security Agency, amongst others, for the purposes of taking this forward.
So I had operational engagements with SSA. I did hand over some information, but at the end of the day, to hand over everything. But that's where the shutdown came. I did hand over the total bundle of information that I have over to the DPCI, to investigators currently involved in Eskom investigations.
Helps us. The SIU, in a briefing to us just over a year ago, speaks about and confirms syndicates, but very specifically to trucking, coal and diesel fuel, that 3 streams, mainly in Mpumalanga. Were those issues that were reported to yourself as well?
So that I got out of my own gathering. Yes, part of it was forthcoming, but also if you look at the business forums or construction mafia, you want to call it, that also has emerged at about all the sites where they were pilfering I think they coined it the development funds of Eskom, where they were be part of social investment in the communities where they moved in. So there's quite an elaborate list, if you want to call for, of syndicates or groupings that are functional. The current team functioning from Megawatt Park, my understanding is they are addressing some of these on through low-level investigations. But if you ask the question, who's behind all of this? Did this just magically just emerge, or was this orchestrated? Because it's like we had someone with an MBA degree that brought everyone together and sort of did the role definition for everyone, and this is how we sit with this whole, it's called syndicated crime. Organized crime, sorry. So but there's something else that is important. We tend to separate corruption and organized crime. What has happened here is, remember, corruption is one of the elements of serious organized crime. So looking at this from organized crime perspective, it's not only at the individual, but you're corrupt, or you are corrupt. It's understand the fact that you're corrupt, especially in terms of the seriousness of it, you're part of a syndicate. You're part of organized crime. It's not individual, transactional, or loose-standing incidents. So once you start understanding that, you understand the severity of what our country is facing currently.
Now, you raised the matter with the National Security Advisor. When he appeared here, he seemed not to know much. So would you put it to us that what was the extent of the briefing that you gave him?
So I engaged him on the 2 matters around Eskom. I did not give him an operational briefing. That was not my role at the time, but what I did raise with him was the issue that we are not functioning from the perspective of national security. That was part of his domain, was my understanding. and that the role players, being the DGs, the ministers, need to be brought together in order to find the resolve. Because having a constable able with a docket under his arm is not going to resolve this problem that we have. We need a comprehensive approach, national security approach from all entities in order to address it. So that was my reason for engaging him. I also advised them that we should not deal on Eskom. We should deal with on the energy sector, because the energy sector and other entities like Eskom in the future is going to be the focus of the organized crime and of future pilfering. So to set up a national mechanism to look at energy security for the country, and obviously the role of the intelligence services, the role of the police, etc., in terms of that. I think after about 2 weeks of the engagement, I heard there was a National Energy Crisis Committee. So whether it relates to our discussion or not, I've got no idea. But that was what I tried to articulate to him in order to lobby for a high-level governance of national security issues.
Right. In the meeting that we had with the National Security Advisor, we raised the issue of the two politicians whom over time the understanding that's out there is that we're dealing with ministers. And what we have asked is that, has the president then been briefed on this potential threat of these being active persons in the course of governance? To what extent was the politician's allegation taken seriously as one which would require attention for the purposes of, because I mean you've made the statement around us here also being politicians, and so when there's a categoric placement, what action was taken in that regard, including but not limited to alerting the president that he may be working with people who are alleged in that space of the challenges of Eskom, because we placed this to him. Yeah.
So I don't know, because at that level I'm not privy to those engagements. But what I can surmise, exactly the same. We asked for a special investigating team to be set up to deal with this matter comprehensively, and nothing was done. So I don't think anything else was done, according to my view or what I can see.
So the General Jacobs team, is it not the one that's supposed to be dealing with these matters?
So they are dealing more with the reported cases. I don't think they will be dealing with this matters. That was part of the argument, or also taking it up to the minister and taking it up to the head of the Hawks. We should have a team that is properly selected and skilled in order to do this kind of investigations. Yeah, it takes extra effort to work at that level, sir.
So would that be the reason why you would have done what I call fragmented reporting, and I use fragmented here constructively, in that you would have had to go to DPCI for some things and SSA for some, because there wasn't the energy security team that you referred to, and has not happened?
So it's not about the fragmented reporting, it's a fragmented approach. What happens, and I've been through this, what happens if you try and assemble a team? You need someone from SARS, you need someone, you end up having to use personal networks and so on. That's not the way to do it. It should be a formal government approach. You know, to listen, but you are designated from SARS, you are designated from SIU. We've worked together with SIU, so that's the way we worked previously. People were allocated and they were designated to do that work. So that is what you were looking for. So it's more about being a fragmented approach, obviously fragmented reporting as well.
All right. I'm going to try and move through these clarities quickly. You spoke about the legality of the private company that was investigating. do you consider it to have been a legal cause of action to have been employed by Eskom to engage a private company on intelligence-related affairs at Eskom?
So if I can rephrase that, I do not regard the uncoordinated or unsanctioned use of private security in the issues of national security as appropriate. Whether it's legal, in certain instances it might be legal. We might be able to argue from a CEO's perspective that I was not being served by the legal entity, or by SSA or intelligence services or the police, for that fact, if his intentions were pure. But in essence, I see they called me a securocrat somewhere in the newspapers, from a securocratic perspective, that is not an advisable position, because you've got no control over the entity, and obviously they start putting their hands on what happened here as well, on confidential information.
You said you raised the matter of the vetting with Minister Pravin Gordhan, and he said you must sort it out. I'm trying to rationalize in my head what that could possibly mean. And you didn't say it, but would there have been no follow-up in terms of asking the minister to clarify what he meant by you sorting it out, in light of the fact that a high premium is placed on vetting, in that it gives one access to the kind of information, and for an executive authority whom one of the, if not the biggest entities, is line function. For me, that response is worrisome. Did you not follow it up? In fact, I find it to be a very flippant response.
So it was, yeah, I was also taken aback by the response. What I tried to explain to him was that the law, if he doesn't trust state security, for instance, to do the vetting, he as minister could approach and ask that defense intelligence, for instance, can conduct the vetting, or the police vetting unit can conduct the vetting, in order to circumvent whatever problems there are or deadlock that is in with state security. And the response was, the two of us must sort it out. It's not my function as a police officer to address that. I merely advised him that it should be sorted out, and there's ways that he can surpass the deadlock with SSA. I don't think there was any appetite for that.
So there was no appetite for vetting?
Mr. Chair, if you look in general in government, all our intelligence officers vetted. State security, are they all vetted? This is something, as part of the capture, is something that is broken down and people just not being vetted. Why? I don't want people scratching my background. To give an example, you know, with the arrest of Machele Koko and some, you know, one of them was previously a serving member of SSA.
I raised the vetting issue because earlier on you spoke about the issues of corruption and capture across the SOEs, and you cited Transnet. And so where I'm really going is that the issue around vetting, is it your position that it is not receiving the requisite attention as a minimum, you know, attention as a minimum from government?
So absolutely, we're not concerned. We're not concerned with it. I actually went as far as I said earlier, I developed in 2018 and beginning of 2019, what I called an integrity support process, which goes much wider than vetting. Remember, vetting originates from the old, let's call it Cold War era, etc., only for securocratic. It's not designed, actually, to be an anti-corruption mechanism. It doesn't test your integrity. It tests your ability to keep secrets, basically. So there's a space, and if I could lobby this, if you want to call it lobbying, is that one must really look at our integrity measures for government and all officials. And part of that will be then the certification for vetting for specific purposes where it has to do with classified information. And there's better ways of dealing with it than we currently are dealing with it. We're in the information era. There's big data that you can utilize and do your risk assessments around individuals on that. Thank you, sir.
Second to last question. You make the contention that we must not assume that state capture is a legacy issue and that it goes to an outlook I have and one I've articulated and one which Minister Godon called state capture 2.0. So is it your contention that state captures remains part and parcel of the daily lived socio-political, economic life of this country?
Yes, sir, I do.
You said in 1995 you were in the National Commissioner's office. Would that commissioner be Commissioner Fizes? What's the nature of your relationship with former Commissioner Fizes?
Now or then?
Well, since then to now.
All right, I was appointed there to work on the Reconstruction Development Program. I think it lasted 4 months, until we identified corruption at logistics, the logistical division and so on. And I was then unceremoniously removed from his office.
Why?
By himself. Okay, so we know each other. We've got a cordial relationship, and that's a long discussion. If you look at what the effect of that period of time was on actual policing in the country.
No, I raise it in the particular context that, well, I suppose is a case of what isiZulu says, to borrow from you using Afrikaans, which says, "Intaba ihlangana, bayahlangana," that mountains don't meet, but people meet. So years later, you find yourself with him now in a forensic space, where he's dealing with Eskom and where you are brought in. And now, in light of what you've said of an ceremonious removal, would you say that the interaction remained purely professional in the exchange of information which you provided, and there was nothing more and nothing less?
Yes, sir, that is a professional engagement. Also, you mentioned the word forensic. I didn't see anything forensic. It was intelligence. Yeah, that's the name of his company. But whether those were the services, that's what I say. My suggestion would be go back to the original tasking or proposition made and see what it was that they were actually conducting, because I don't know.
Okay. At the risk of exposing my age, which is for public consumption in any case, you were a police officer longer than I've been alive. Thank you for your service. I'm going to go to colleagues for final comment questions, and then we can wrap it up. And I just want to make 1 or 2 proposals about the way forward. Honorable Hadebe just tanked in. We're wrapping up.
No, thanks, Chair. I kept on hearing Mr. de Ruyter was not served by the state security agents. Yet there has been no indication that he approached them. And in fact, you did confirm that he did not approach them. So would it be fair to conclude on such if 1, he did not approach the state security agent, 2, he was not vetted, And the third and most important aspect is that we don't know the operation of the state security agents, because such information can only be shared with people who are vetted. So arriving at that conclusion, don't you think it would be fair, unless, of course, there were attempts made to ascertain such information with the state security agents?
Thank you, sir. Can I suggest that we turn it around? The State Security Agency has an obligation to Eskom and all other areas of national interest to conduct it. My question is, was it information on the table?
But that information can be shared with public. It's classified information. So we can't arrive at a conclusion that will be seriously misguided.
So I'm security classified, top secret. I've been most of my life. I have engaged them. So what I'm just saying is we need to look at what Mr. Chairperson...
Unless you know something that we don't know, for you to arrive at
Let
that
him
conclusion.
finish the response, then
But
you can come in, just complete the response, and then you can come in.
You need to look at the value chain. In other words, there's supposed to be a flow. State security serving a national security or national intelligence estimate, energy sector being one of the energy or the national security priorities, the national intelligence priority being Eskom, etc., etc. There's a system around it. The system is not functioning. Okay.
I'm saying precisely that national estimates are not for public consumption unless you know something you don't know. For you to make that bold statement, you must be privy of some formation that is not at our disposal.
Let me make an answer in such a
Because
way.
it seeks to suggest that the national estimates provided did not contain anything in relation to Eskom. For you to make such a statement.
Right, let me make a ruling on this matter. That's an intelligence matter. And
Chair, all I'm saying is that we can't make such statements related to intelligence and arrive at a conclusion.
That's the ruling I want to make. To say that what we have established is that SSA and Mr. de Ruyter had no relationship. And therefore, we cannot conclusively here. We'll note what you have said. We've got observations around the relationship that, or lack thereof. But we can't wade into the merits and demerits as to that. What we know categorically from Mr. de Ruyter, confirmed by yourself, is that he was not prepared to submit himself or subject himself to vetting. And so for us, the matter ends there. In our recommendations, we can make a recommendation about how it proceeds forward, and there may be merit to the request that you have made or the assertion you've made in your correspondence to interact with the JSCI, because you've got vetting. You are at that level. Us here, we are not, except Honorable Hatem. So you can meet there and then have this conversation further. But we can make an observation about Mr. de Ruyter and SSA. And we know categorically the things that he has put to us as well, because I would not want us to venture into a space that's not our competence. Safe to say, we are concerned about vetting. It remains Achilles' heel, and it speaks to a government not committed to its own commitment, because there's a decision on the table that people must be vetted. And our outlook is that the CEO of Transnet left without being vetted. The CFO of Transnet left without being vetted. There's a long list. So it's a conversation that we will recommend should continue in that space. So I just want to hold it there. That's why I'm getting Linden right. Okay. Wait. There's hands. Hatebe and the Brigadier. Stand by on this matter.
On the same matter, Chair, I think the correct phrasing would be that because SAA confirmed to us that they are stationed at Eskom, where they are receiving application, Mr. de Ruyter chose not to get it done. So the relationship was a choice of Mr. de Ruyter. And SSA was stationed there, so he chose not to be vetted. Then other statements that you have made would follow through in terms of insisting that he must be vetted. So don't make it that SAA did not attempt to when they were called to. But the minister was here at the time, the deputy were there. They confirmed to us that they are stationed at Eskom.
Just
So
hang
that was
ten,
his choice.
Brigadier. Honorable Van Minen, just wait. Just your mic, Honorable.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole here that could take us all afternoon. But as I remember it, the vetting was delayed, it didn't happen, and then by the time it was starting to happen, Andre de Ruyter said that he was leaving in any event, so he didn't see the point, so he didn't proceed with it.
I'm going to suppress this
Yeah, no,
debate on,
Chair,
on
let's
vetting.
suppress, because the latest information we received under the name of De Ruyter, it said outstanding documents. There were outstanding documents requested, and those documents were not finished. So it becomes immaterial, the issue of him resigning. The fact of the matter,
Colleagues,
when he ought
Wait.
to have submitted
Wait.
documents, he did not.
Wait, that's why I've said we will make the necessary recommendations on the issue of vetting. Suffice it to say, Mr. De Ruyter was never vetted, and we have raised it before. And that presented a security challenge
Thank you,
and a
Chair.
security risk.
Let me
the
proceed.
matter of vetting
Yeah.
ends there.
Brigadier Berger, you indicated that you are aware of one or two names who funded the investigation. So meaning you knew that there was this forensic investigation. But what I did not get from you, and okay, you are not comfortable giving us the information of the one or two funders that funded this investigation. The question is, how did you become aware of such?
Mr. Chair, I can't exactly remember where it came from. I did not investigate that. That's not part of my scope. Also, therefore, I can't validate, what I heard, who was behind it.
So you can't recall who told you that we are funding this investigation?
It was, I think, most probably a discussion with Andre de Ruyter. So, yeah, no one else I would have, and 5 us. So, yeah. So the names I cannot provide. The names I heard, I cannot provide, because I also cannot vouch and validate that that was correct.
Okay. But the fact of the matter is that you knew that certain individuals in the private sector have pumped in money privately to investigate Eskom. Secondly, the implicated officials. I want you to confirm on record, you are saying that information did not come from Mr. De Ruyter, it came from George Fivers. Is that correct?
Officials or politicians? You
The-
said officials.
That's what I'm trying to ascertain, whether it's politicians or officials, and whether the information came from Mr. De Ruyter or Fivers, and under what circumstances did it came about that such information was shared with you?
That was part of the initial allegations that was made by the 5S group. Yeah, they mentioned a lot of people, a lot of names. Again, unsubstantiated at that stage.
And those names include officials and politicians.
That is correct. And private citizens and businessmen.
And for such informations to be substantiated, validated, they needed to produce something to substantiate. Okay, let's leave the validation. To substantiate those allegations, they needed to produce further information.
So all that had to be enriched or further substantiated by the intelligence processes or agencies.
Did you request Fivers to provide further information to
Yes,
substantiate?
we asked for validation.
Was that information provided?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I want to thank you, colleagues. Retired Brigadier Berger, I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the committee to thank you for appearing before us this morning and for engaging with our questions and providing clarity. I'm not one to lament, but maybe in this case I will. Had we spoken to you first, I think there would have been far more clarity on the Eskom matters. But rather late than never, I think our outlook has been enriched as you were an active player in what was happening, not in the corruption and maladministration, but in what the operations as a response to what was happening. And I think you've provided clarity for us, which we need to now take forward with the necessary persons. So thank you very much, sir, for your time, and I would like to wish you well on behalf of colleagues on your retirement. You said you're living your life now. May it be meaningful, fulfilling, and hopefully you will not be lost to the public services and when you are required for consultations, given the extent of your experience, which spans 40 years. So thank you very much, sir, and to your legal representative who has, I'm sure, provided you the necessary support and assurance during this process. So thank you very much, sir, for your attendance. Colleagues, my outlook... I'll give him an opportunity. I'm going to... Wait. Hey, you see, I've got... You see, yesterday I wasn't here, so he chaired, so he still has hangover of chairing from yesterday. Colleagues, no, I will give him an opportunity to make concluding remarks, which he has. I wanted to say, I think we need to round off on this matter properly. So I think we need to meet with the National Commissioner and Major General Boyson to close this matter off. Yeah. We can have a discussion even next week on how we take it forward. But I think we have arrived at the tail end of what has been a long process since April on this matter. Or the inverse could be written submissions for the purposes of clarity on issues that we require clarity on. And then to our secretariat, we can invite anyone. Doesn't matter, employed or not, we can, because, and then to our secretariat, research content, can we please have a draft report on this Eskom matter at the end of the month? Colleagues, please make your inputs over the next 2 weeks so that we can consider a report on this Eskom matter on the week of the 4th of December before Parliament rises for 2023. So in the next 2 weeks, all your notes, observations, contributions, and we'll begin the very long process now of compiling a report to at least have it ready at the first week of November. The matter has to come to a logical parliamentary conclusion. It's been a long year and a lot of resources have been invested in this, and we need to report to the House. Brigadier Burger, any concluding remarks on your side?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. Apologies for the perceived avoidance, but I think you understand my position. Also, that I have to ensure that I am legally protected also, because my organization would not necessarily have done that. But thank you, and again, I'm a citizen of this country, active, and wherever needed, I will support. There's a long road to restore the integrity of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fatima and Advocate, thank you very much for all you have done and for engaging the legal representatives in the long meetings that you held, and for guiding us as well on this. So I want to thank Parliament Legal for all your hard work as well, and the long phone calls and my moaning and all sorts of other things that I subjected you to in the early hours of the morning and night. So thank you very much. All right, colleagues, we are invited to lunch down the passage in Mark's building, and the House is going to be sitting at 3 this afternoon for questions to the social services cluster and a debate on the fiscal statement that was presented. So the meeting stands adjourned. Good afternoon, take care, and God bless.